Hey guys, Cadence and Reefer here. Before I begin today's chapter of Luan Goes Too Far, shout out to Space Voyager 2071 for viewing chapter 3 of the series, and a little disclaimer for these next two chapters things get intense. So if you are sensitive to the subject matter of these next few chapters, click out of the video immediately. Go watch some of my other content. But without further ado, let's get into chapter 4 Guilt Trip. The following morning wasn't anything special, nor was the Loud family as active as they usually were. Lana was currently making a few repairs on the fridge since it had taken some damage the other day when falling over, and she also tightened the legs up so it wouldn't fall over again. The other Loud siblings sat in their rooms, just staring out their windows in despair over their brother. Lucy lay in her coffin bed with the lid shut, writing a sad poem about nearly losing her dear brother. As for Luan, she sat near the edge of her bed, just staring ahead at the wall with a forlorn expression. As for Rita and Lynn Sr., the two of them sat on their bed, worried out of their minds about Lincoln. Couldn't sleep well last night either, I take it, Lynn Sr. said, feeling a bit groggy. No, not really, Rita replied. I just can't stop thinking about Lincoln. Same here, honey, Lynn Sr. said. I can't believe something like this happened. I just don't know what to do. Do you really think rounding Luan for the year was the right decision? I mean, banning her from pulling pranks and telling puns in this house seems perfectly reasonable, but a whole year being grounded? That seems a bit extreme, Rita wondered. As extreme as it may be, I believe grounding Luan for the rest of the year was perfectly justified, Lynn Sr. replied in a firm voice. What she did was beyond deadly serious, Rita. While Luan may have not deliberately caused Lincoln's accident, she still acted recklessly like she always does with these pranks of hers and almost got him killed in the process. She doesn't deserve to be given any leniency for something like this. True, Rita agreed. Yet I don't know how Luan will make a living now that she's banned from doing comedy in the family house. Comedy is all that she's known since she was young. Yes, that's true, Lynn Sr. admitted, but until Luan moves out of the house, we can't allow her to continue pursuing that career. If Luan wishes to continue her career as a comedian, she'll have to do it once she's moved out of the house. I know it sounds cruel and unfair, but we can't allow Luan to keep doing what she's been doing for the past 10 years every April Fool's Day. While I didn't have so much of a problem with Luan telling jokes and puns, albeit annoying ones at that, it's her pranking that I have a huge issue with. To be honest, didn't much care for Luan's puns and jokes, but I've always had a big issue with her pranks that she's always pulled every year on April Fool's Day, Rita admitted as well. It's as you said, Lynn. Luan would always find new ways to prank us every single year, yet even after she swore multiple times that she'd stop, but she still didn't. We honestly should have stood up to Luan like true parents would and put a stop to her pranking sprees ourselves a long time ago. If we had just did that, instead of just giving in to our fears and letting Luan have her way, then Lincoln wouldn't have. Rita paused and felt her sorrow returning as she thought of her only son in the hospital, his body and mind crippled from Luan's botched prank trap. Just thinking about it almost brought Rita on the verge of tears as she recalled what Dr. Lloyd had mentioned about Lincoln's condition and how it would forever affect his life in the worst way imaginable. I know, honey, Lynn Sr. replied sadly, and as much as I don't want to admit it, I can't continue to deny the fact that Lincoln's accident is partially our fault as well. While I know that Luan never intended to purposely drop that fridge on Lincoln, it's still our fault for not taking action while we still had the chance. We honestly shouldn't have allowed Luan to pull pranks like this in the first place to begin with, but like the idiots we were, we allowed her to do so. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for that. Rita knew that her husband was right, and she couldn't deny it. Although Len Sr. and Rita were finally taking action and putting a stop to Luann's pranks once and for all, the damage had already been done, and one of their family members had paid the horrible price for their cowardness. Lincoln would never be able to reach his full potential in life due to his internal injuries and severe brain damage, and even if Lisa found some way to help him recover, there was no guarantee that he'd ever be the same again. I'll never forgive myself either, Rena replied sadly. I just don't know what to do, Lynn. I'm so scared for Lincoln. What if something happens to him while he's recovering in the hospital? And how will he be able to live once you and I are gone? I'm just as scared as you are, Rita, but we shouldn't start to panic. If something happens to you and me, or when our time finally comes and we pass on from old age, Lincoln will have his sisters to watch over him. The doctor even mentioned this, and I have complete faith in our daughters that they'll see Lincoln through to the end, Lynn Sr. explained. So do I, Rita agreed. As Rita and Lynn Sr. continued to comfort each other in their room, Lisa was currently working on a new device of hers and Lily's room. While her true goal was to construct one of her other planned inventions to help Lincoln, she wanted to try and help Luan as well. Lily looked up from her crib and gazed at the device Lisa was constructing, which resembled a metal headband colored gray with a USB plug on the left side, a cord on the right side, and several metal antennae sticking out from the sides. "What that?" Lily asked Lisa in her usual babyish voice. "Oh, this?" Lisa replied, holding up the metal headband. "This device is what I call the MS-3000, or Dream Simulator 3000 for short." "Eh?" Lily said, obviously confused. "I take it you don't understand what I'm saying, so I'll try to explain," Lisa started. "This device has the ability to create a virtual world within your dreams, depending on what virtual program is loaded onto it. There's only one catch. It'll only work when you're asleep. I plan to test it out on Luan in order to help give her some closure to what she's done and try to move on. Think of it as a form of counseling in a technological sort of way." "Luan sleep?" Lily asked Lisa. "Not now," Lisa said, "but later tonight, once we head off to bed, I'll slip this device on Luan and give it a go. I've already programmed the perfect dream simulation into the DS3000, so hopefully this should help Luan a lot. Afterwards, I'll get started on one of my other inventions to try and help Lincoln." Lisa then plugged the DS3000 into a laptop with a USB cable and ran some diagnostics on it to make sure it was fully functioning. Then she set it back down on her table and began working on the blueprints to her other secret invention that would hopefully aid her in trying to heal some of Lincoln's injuries once he was out of the hospital. It would take some time to construct due to how complex and advanced the mechanics of this invention was, but Lisa hoped she'd be able to complete it before the end of the month if she was lucky. "What? He's in the hospital?" Ronnie Ann exclaimed in shock over Lori's phone. "Yes, I'm afraid it's true," Lori said sadly. "I take it that Bobby told you last night?" "Yes, he told me that Lincoln was in the hospital undergoing surgery, but he didn't tell me why. Bobby got really upset when I asked him about it and walked out of the room," Ronnie Ann replied. "Well, it's a long story, and I need to warn you that you're not going to like it one bit," Lori said seriously, then proceeded to tell Ronnie Ann everything that had happened the other day on April Fool's Day. Once Lori mentioned the part about Lincoln being badly crippled by one of Luan's pranks, she began to hear Ronnie Ann start to tense up over the phone. "No! What happened to him?" Ronnie Ann panicked. "One of Luan's prank traps went terribly wrong and caused the refrigerator to fall on Lincoln and nearly killed him," Lori explained grimly. "He had to be transported to the hospital in one of those big rig semi-truck ambulances they use for very serious emergencies. Had the EMTs arrived any later, Lincoln would probably be in the coroner's freezer vault right now." "My God, how bad are his injuries?" Ronnie Ann asked, clearly worried about out of her mind at this point. "Very bad," Lori replied. "Lincoln's lung got punctured by a broken rib which had to be drained with a trocar in the ambulance, and he received a broken forearm as well, but that's not even the worst of it. He's been paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life, and he's got some very severe brain damage." How bad is it?" "It's not too serious, is it?" Ronnie Ann stuttered, almost too afraid to ask. It's bad. Far worse than any of his other injuries combined," Lori replied, feeling very uneasy. "Lincoln's brain has been so badly damaged that his mind has reverted back to the mindset of a toddler, and he's suffered memory loss as well. In other words, he's been permanently reduced to a state of mental retardation for the rest of his life. Because of this, Lincoln will have to be taken care of for the rest of his life as well in regards to being fed, dressed, bathed, and even using the bathroom. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that Lincoln will have to be put in diapers again until he's well enough to be re-educated on using the toilet." Ronnie Ann was silent for over a minute until she finally spoke up again, and she sounded very upset. "Lori, tell me you're lying. This can't be true. It can't be." Ronnie Ann stammered, clearly on the verge of a breakdown at this point. "I really wish I was, Ronnie Ann, but this is no joke. I would never lie about something like this," Lori said sadly. Then it's true," Ronnie Ann replied, now sounding like she was crying. Can he at least still speak? Yes, but not coherently, Lori answered. Due to the brain damage he suffered, Lincoln isn't able to speak normally like he used to. The best he can do is say simple words like mom, sis, and dad. Other than that, everything Lincoln says is all incoherent gibberish, yet he does seem slightly aware of his surroundings. What do you mean by that? Ronnie Ann asked meekly. From what I witnessed, Lincoln seems to react to his surroundings the way a toddler would, and he'd react a certain way around each of us. It's hard to explain in words. You have to see it for yourself to understand better, Lori answered. I have to see him. Is there any chance of being able to visit Lincoln anytime soon? Ronnie Ann said frantically. Yes, we're all planning to visit him in a bit, but you live at least an hour away, so it'd take you a while to reach the hospital. Also, there's something else you need to consider, Lori said, with a bit of concern in her voice. And what is that? Ronnie Ann asked. Remember how I said Lincoln suffered memory loss because of brain damage? Well, there's a good chance that he may not recognize you when he sees you. So I thought you should know so that you're prepared when you see him, Lori informed. Don't say that! He won't forget me. I know he won't, Ronnie Ann snapped in disbelief. Lori could already tell from her tone that Ronnie Ann wasn't taking this well at all, and she couldn't blame her. All of Lincoln's friends had been notified by his family earlier about what had happened to him, and they were all on edge about it. Especially Ronnie Ann. Despite being the toughest girl in her old school and being able to handle almost anything, nothing could have prepared Ronnie Ann for something like this. It was no mystery as to why she doubted the possibility of Lincoln no longer recognizing her due to his brain damage. Ronnie Ann didn't want to accept the fact that she may end up losing her only boyfriend forever, not through death, but by possible permanent memory loss. Ronnie Ann, I know this is hard to take in, but trust me when I say that it's a fact we'll all have to consider. Now, the doctor did say that as Lincoln's brain heals over time, he might recover some of his memories, but not all of them due to how serious the damage done to his temporal lobe was. Also, Lisa told us that she'll try and see if she can try to construct a new invention that might heal some of the brain damage once Lincoln returns home, but she'll need to fully examine him in order to see how bad the damage actually is in order to determine whether or not she can fix some of it, Lori explained. Is that even possible? I know Lisa is a prodigal genius, but I don't know if even she could fix injuries this serious, Ronnie Ann wondered, sounding a bit at ease. Neither do I, Lori replied. Lisa even said that she might not be able to fix the damage entirely due to how serious Lincoln's injuries are. I can only hope that she'll be able to try and find a way to restore some of his higher brain functions or his memories. However, Lisa will need to actually examine Lincoln up close in order to find out just what can be healed and what can't be healed, and it'll be at least a month until Lincoln can return home. So then I take it that Lisa will have to wait a month until she can examine Lincoln to try and help him, Ronnie Ann asked. Yes, unfortunately so, Lori answered with a sorry sigh. I know this is hard for all of us, but we'll get through it, and I can only hope Luan will as well. Don't mention that dirty pranker's name. She's the reason that Lincoln's in this horrible state to begin with. How can she even sleep at night after reducing Lincoln to a cell of his former self? I swear to God, I'm gonna strangle that prankster when I find her, Ronnie Ann raged. Ronnie Ann, there's no need for that. Luan's really upset and guilt-ridden by causing Lincoln's horrible accident, so beating her to a pulp isn't going to solve anything. That won't undo what Luan did. She should be. Why the heck would Luan drop a fridge on Lincoln? She should have known he'd get badly hurt from something like that, Ronnie Ann snapped coldly. Luan didn't do it intentionally. One of the balancing feet on the fridge was old and loose, and it broke off when Lincoln hit it. That's what caused it to fall on him, Lori protested. Well, maybe if Luan used her head for once and actually checked the fridge for small details like that, this never would have happened, Ronnie Ann shot back aggressively. I know. Mom and Dad actually pointed that out to Luan after we rushed out of Lisa's bunker to try and help Lincoln. But I can promise you that she'll never be pranking anyone in our house or anywhere else ever again. Mom and Dad grounded her for the rest of the year, and they've placed a permanent rank and pun ban on this household. They'll also be required to help pay for Lincoln's hospital bills, and judging from how much surgery the doctors performed on him, they won't be cheap, Lori explained. Lori, do you honestly think that Luan's going to give up pranking that easily? Ronnie Ann questioned. That question struck Lori hard like a brick to the head. That was the same question that Lori herself had asked Lenny just last night, and it was probably the most cliche question that had been on everyone's mind since Rena and Len Sr. grounded Luan and placed the no pranking and no pun ban on the house. Ronnie Ann, I honestly thought about that long and hard, and to be honest, Lori paused with a sigh and said, I think after seeing what her actions caused, she's never going to want to prank anyone ever again. I honestly don't know about that, Laurie. However, from what you told me, I have to admit that you have a point. I can probably see Lynn finally coming to her senses after putting her own brother in the hospital, which I imagine was a huge eye opener for her, Ronnie Ann admitted. Yes, I have no doubt about at all. Lynn was crying her eyes out in Lincoln's room the other night, and she was begging for forgiveness from all of us about an hour ago for all the pranks he's pulled on us each year. Yeah, I don't think Luan's going to be pranking anyone again anytime soon. If not ever again, Lori said with relief. That'd be a big relief, Ronnie Ann admitted. Yes, it is, Lori agreed, but I'm so worried about Lincoln. I can't imagine what he's going through right now in the hospital. Lincoln probably has no clue what's going on around him because of his brain damage, and I'm worried that he might end up hurting himself in the process because of it. My thoughts exactly. Also, how is Lincoln going to get around in the house now that he's paralyzed from the waist down? Ronnie Ann asked. Mom and Dad said they'll have to install a stair lift system to the stairs so that Lincoln will be able to get up to the top of them. Lana agreed to help install it since she's a whiz with gadgets. Lori replied. Will Lan be helping to pay for it like with Lincoln's hospital bills? Ronnie Ann asked curiously. Oh, absolutely, Lori said, as a matter of factly. Mom and Dad are really cracking down hard on Lynn for what she's done. Since she's the one who caused this calamity in the first place, they said she's going to help pay for it. How the heck is Lynn gonna afford to help pay for the hospital bills and stairlift? I know for a fact that those won't be cheap. Ronnie Ann wondered. Mom and Dad are currently looking at part-time jobs for Lynn. We don't want her working at that joke shop anymore since it's related to comedy. Like I said, they're cracking down real hard on Lynn, and that means no being associated with anything related to comedy, Lori answered. Yeah, I can't blame them for that, Ronnie Ann said. That joke shop would just tempt Luan to revert back to her old ways, and that's the last thing we want, especially after the incident with Lincoln. I'm not sure if she'd do that after all that's happened, but it's honestly not worth the risk, Lori replied. No, it isn't, Ronnie Ann agreed. As Lori was about to respond, she heard a knock on her door. Hang on, someone's at my door, Lori said, raising her head towards the door. Who's there? It's Lenny. We're going to visit Lincoln in a few minutes, Lenny called out. All right, I'll be down in a minute, Lori responded back, then turned back to her phone. I gotta get going, Ronnie Ann. We're going to see Lincoln in a few minutes. Okay, I'll try to come see him too, but it might be a while till I get there, since Royal Woods is a few hours away from where I am, Ronnie Ann replied. That's fine. I understand. I'll see you then, Lori said, then hung up.